this webinar started. So good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many of you taking your time to join us today, and welcome to CiC's sixth and final webinar in the physical activity series. My name is Jake Joyce. I'm the physical wellbeing stream lead here at CiC, and we are thrilled to continue this series with a dual webinar on the mental fitness through physical activity. For those who haven't joined us before, our host for these sessions is Grant Yule, who has over 23 years of experience in rehabilitation, athlete performance and rehabilitation. And we have also been joined by my colleague at CiC, Harry Saville, who holds degrees in psychology and neuroscience. Harry also has experience in workplace coaching and focusing on mental well-being and neurodiversity. And for any of those of you here today who are interested in neurodiversity, we do have separate webinar series for them as well. The aim for this session is to be as interactive as possible, so we invite you to use the chat function to introduce yourselves, drop comments and post any questions as we go through. We have set a good amount of time towards the end of the session for Grant and Harry to respond to as many questions and comments as you have. I would also like to add this session is being recorded, so if you would like to watch it back yourself, or you do have any colleagues that were unable to attend but like to watch this webinar, please just let them know. And now without further ado, I will hand you over to Harry and Grant to get this session started.
Lovely. Thank you, Jake. So yeah, welcome everyone to our webinar today looking at physical health and mental health connections. So yeah, very happy to be here today to discuss, from my side at least, the links from the mental health and wellbeing side and how that links in with physical health before we pass over to Grant to kind of talk about practically what you can do to build that physical or good habits into your daily routine. So yeah, as Jake mentioned, we'll be using the chat a lot today to have some discussion. So please feel free to share your thoughts, what your experiences are of what we're talking about. We have, obviously, as Jake mentioned, time at the end for the Q&A. So if you've got any questions there, absolutely feel free to save it for then as well. So start off with, from a mental health perspective, it'd be good to get the chat moving first of all, thinking about what comes to mind when you hear the term mental health. What does that mean to you? You could be thinking about what kind of that might feel like in terms of your experiences of mental health, what the definition is. What does that term mental health mean to you? Yeah, you have someone sharing, so feeling a sense of well-being. So yeah, that kind of maybe like a state of that sense of well-being. Absolutely, ability to be happy. Yeah, so being happy, but also the ability to be happy. Yeah, in a dialogue, negative or positive. Yeah, so I think that's a really good point. So thinking about, I think often the word mental health can be stigmatized as always negative. We hear people saying, "Oh, I don't have mental health," as if it's like just a negative thing. Actually, it's one of the things we want to look at today. We're seeing mental health the same as physical health, something we all have. As you said there, the idea of it can sometimes be negative, or it can be positive. So yeah, understanding that is really important. Resilience, yeah, it's a really good point. So thinking about how we talk about a lot in our mental health webinars, thinking about how do we build and support our own mental well-being. So that idea of resilience, how do we build resilience? So it's something that we spoke about a lot in our previous webinar, actually looking at stress. So if you weren't able to attend that, we'll have the recording available on Ellie soon. Emotional health, managing stress and life events. Yeah, absolutely. Probably links in with that idea of resilience as well. Someone's mentioned anxiety. Yes, something that comes up a lot with mental health. Reflection, yeah, something we talk about a lot as well in terms of when we're thinking about tools for building resilience, understanding yourself, thinking about what you need. Yeah, so yeah, like I said, if anyone missed our webinar, I think it was last week or the week before, thinking about stress and resilience, please do have a look. Getting a positive mindset, staying well and motivated when under stress. Yeah, so a lot of you seem to be thinking about it in terms of that resilience. So when you experience those stressful situations, how do you manage yourself? So yeah, absolutely, building that resilience is really, really important. So yeah, by definition, so I think someone mentioned here kind of emotional well-being. Emotional health, someone mentioned in the chat. That's one of the aspects of this, definitely. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological and social well-being. So to that end, it affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. So as a consequence, it helps us determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices in our daily lives. So I think I'm sure we can all think about situations where maybe you're feeling a bit low or a bit stressed, where maybe you've come into the workplace or maybe having interactions with your family, and how that looks maybe to be determined by how you're feeling that day. So thinking about how you interact with others, your decision making, when something does occur, how do you cope in those situations? And lastly, it's as tied irrevocably to our general well-being and physical well-being. So this is why we're here today, talking about the links between the two. So thinking about that connection, first of all, so I'm going to talk through a few links some key links that we've seen. But as we're talking through, please feel free to use the chat to share kind of what that looks like for you. How does physical health affect your mental health? So first of all, some really big neurological benefits. So seeing when you do that regular exercise, or even just a period of exercise in a day, you see that boost of those feel-good hormones in our brain. So those neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine to really act like a natural antidepressant in our brains. It gives you that boost. I'm sure if anyone here exercises regularly, you kind of get that. You hear that term, like runner's high, for people who are runners. You really get that boost immediately after exercise. So it has a massive benefit there. Please do share as well if that's something that resonates with you. Self-esteem and social connections outside of the neurological side, actually just connecting with it in the first place. Often, exercise is linked with social connections. So something we talk about a lot in our mental health well-being webinars, thinking about that self-care and what's really useful, and the value of social connections and having that sense of belonging. Given that opportunity of social interaction, that can give us also a bit of a boost. Also, just engaging in physical activities does help boost your self-esteem, especially if it's something that if you're improving, you can get that sense of, I'm capable of improving in this. It gives you that sense of self-esteem. I kind of touched on the idea of self-care as well. So it's something that, as mentioned, something we talk about a lot in terms of building resilience. So regular exercise is a really important part of that, in terms of boosting your physical health and your mental health. The points mentioned, the neurological benefits, similar to the importance of having a balanced diet, adequate sleep, all those things social connection as well, has equal importance there. Lastly here, I think the knock-on effect, we've spoken about a few of the bits here, the knock-on effects, but even just the knock-on effect from doing exercise and how it impacts on all those areas of self-care. So when you do more exercise, you're more likely to have a better night's sleep. So it has a knock-on effect the next day that improves mental well-being even further. I think when you are exercising regularly, often it kind of helps you improve your diet, so you have more motivation to improve your diet with that as well. If you're getting those neurological benefits, helps boost your well-being, that can impact your social connections as well. So it has all that knock-on effect that we've spoken about earlier in the points. So please do share kind of what does that look like for you? How does your physical exercise affect your mental health? Someone's mentioned in here, so I went to the gym today. I'm also training for the marathon this year, so it definitely resonates with me. When I don't have that, I definitely lose less energized and less happy in myself. I totally get that. I think that energized is definitely something I feel. Something that I've started going to the gym in the morning more, it feels like almost like having a cup of coffee for free. Going to the gym, it gives you that boost, can think clearer, and more kind of alert during the day. So absolutely. And probably having that goal as well, the marathon, it gives you that kind of self-esteem when you're improving. You've got that long-term goal, that all those points you spoke about with self-care all kind of gives you a motivation to really engage with them as well, especially if you're quite competitive. I think that definitely helps. Anyone else? Does that resonate with you at all? Yeah, someone mentioned sleeping much better and longer, which I'm kind of worried about, I'd say. Yeah, something we've seen a lot recently. There's a lot of research out at the moment about the impact of sleep on our mental health. So anything we can do during the day to help kind of gear us up for that evening to help us sleep better makes a massive difference. I'm sure, yeah, you mentioned how it's helped you sleep better. I'm sure you can think about the next day, how that's impacted you as well, kind of how the benefits have been there. I know I noticed that difference after lockdown and going back to the office. I was working in an office full time then, and going back to exercise being something you had to try and make time for during lockdown to having that commute back and that first week being kind of sleeping much better. You're just going to getting those steps in more regularly. So even just something simple, small like that could make a massive difference. What I would say with this slide as well, it doesn't have to be a massive workout we're talking about. Something even as simple as a 20-minute walk can make a massive difference neurologically as well. So don't feel like you have to, really, not everyone has to run a marathon. So it's good this person's training for the marathon, but don't feel like you all have to do the same. So it can be something quite small. I'll keep moving, but keep sharing your thoughts in the chat, kind of how that helps you. Because we also see the flip side, how mental health affects physical health. So a few points here I've seen. So again, you can keep sharing about how your physical health improves your mental health, but also share here as well how your mental health affects your physical health. So you can see that improved immune system. So when we see like often people experience chronic stress and poor mental health can lead to a weakened immune system, making the body more susceptible to infection. So you might, I don't know if anyone experiences stress here or has experienced those moments where you have experienced stress and you might feel physically impacted by that. Reduced psychosomatic disorders. So this is where mental health issues manifest as physical symptoms. So we talk about a lot in our stress sessions, the physical impact of that. So if anyone experiences that stomach pain due to anxiety or butterflies, it's something that might be reduced as well. The gut-brain axis plays a crucial role in maintaining overall health and can influence various aspects of both digestion and mental health as well. So the more we look after our brain, the more that gut health is improved as well. There's lots of evidence out there around the reduced risk of chronic disease. So positive well-being can help reduce risks of developing chronic conditions like heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, cancer. So yes, it has a massive impact not just on mental health and how we're feeling, but also reduced risk of those physical chronic conditions. A few other points in here. I'll go to the chat quickly, see what people have put in there. Someone's mentioned the day I exercise, especially in the morning, I feel delighted, motivated, energized, work productively. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm definitely the same. So I try to understand more on the physical and nutritional impact on serotonin and dopamine to support ADHD. That's a really interesting point. I know a lot of people with ADHD can really struggle with how they maintain or regulate their focus during the day, and in certain environments it can be really tricky. I know some people I've worked with where their exercise or their sleep is impacted, it can really lead to a lot of almost stress for them, thinking about, oh, this is really going to impact me the next day. So yeah, understanding this more hopefully makes a big difference. I struggle with remaining consistent due to already feeling quite tired and managing a chronic pain from a health condition. Yeah, that's something we'll talk about on the next slide. Hopefully, yeah, we'll talk about building those habits, and anything we can do to help with that would be useful. A few other points here before I move on. As we spoke about in the chat as well, makes you more motivated to have those healthier lifestyle choices. Experiencing lower stress levels. Stress often can lead to tension in our muscles as well. So reducing the stress levels, feeling more flexible as well. Lower inflammation in the body. Yeah, just a few points there. But one last question before I pass over to Grant. What are some of the barriers to exercise? Someone's been great sharing kind of the challenges they've had around that. So thinking about managing that chronic pain and how difficult that can be. Yeah, that's something I've heard a lot where people have experienced a physical condition and how that's impacted their physical kind of ability to exercise, and then that knock-on effect to mental health as well. It's really challenging. What have we got here? So time, definitely, especially with workload, something we hear a lot. Physical ability, so feeling kind of maybe just your physical ability for certain activities, or sometimes it can be confidence as well around that, how you feel you can engage with certain things. Consistency, yeah, the consistency is one that I think a lot of people can fall down on, especially if their work's quite variable. So people want to shift work. I have friends who don't really work a 9 to 5, and it's quite hard to get that discipline, that routine. Motivation, something they have to work, having that, or feeling they have a lot of work to do, that workload is a real barrier. Responsibilities at home as well. You see that people have family responsibilities, so they have their work, but they have to come home, they haven't got time outside of that as well. Consistency seems to be coming up a lot. And physical ability as well. So I think that'd be useful in the second half to think about how we can slowly building that up, isn't it? Hopefully there's some tips there to support. Not enough sleep, someone's mentioned, yeah. So it links all in, doesn't it? It shows how all these little parts of self-care all linking with each other. So you try and find ways of helping build your physical activity levels. Even little things, focusing on diet and your sleep as well, can make a big difference. Hostile environments, in the gyms, etc. for women, people with larger bodies, so feeling maybe not secure in certain environments. That's a really good point. Creating habits, that's something that we'll be talking about either today and in future sessions as well. Someone's mentioned here, so when you have that habit, when you're doing it 2 to 3 times a week quite comfortably, and you drop out of it, and it's quite hard to get back into. Not sure why. It's really hard to get that going again sometimes, isn't it? You've got into a good habit and it's almost automatic, but then when you slipped out of it, coming back to that can be really tricky. It becomes more of an effortful process. And lastly, before I move on, as I've mentioned, it's hard to juggle to work, leisure, exercise routine. I think so. We talk about a lot in our stress sessions and thinking about how do I prioritize myself and my self-care, thinking about creating boundaries for ourselves. So like I said before, if you've missed our stress session a couple of weeks ago, and please do have a listen. So we talk about a lot in there as well. It's good just to get a think about. I've got a few other bits here. I think you've all mentioned a lot of these, like time constraints, motivation, social support. Costs can sometimes be an issue as well. You mentioned the impact of poor mental health on motivation. Sometimes when you're having that poor mental health, your motivation can be reduced as well. Don't really feel like going out as much, and that can impact on your confidence and motivation to get back into exercise as well. Someone's mentioned in the chat about the link to the stress session. Of course, we can share some information about where that's saved afterwards as well. So I'll pass over to you now, Grant. So it's good to get you all thinking about why it's so valuable, about, it's not just impacting ourselves physically, but also gives you a boost as well. So it's easy way of, like I said, gives you that free neurological antidepressant. So I'll pass over to Grant now to think about practically how we can build that into our routines.
That was great. Really good, insightful chat, Harry. A lot of the questions were great as well, the responses. So hopefully should be able to help answer a lot of those kind of questions. So I'm a full-time coach, so I've been doing it for 23 years, which is frightening to think about. So today's actually when you started doing these webinars, I really kind of want to instill here what I do with my clients one-to-one, because a lot of it's going to be really relatable to the individual. The first thing, usual kind of cycle I'll see with people is that they rely on self-motivation to get going. So a lot of that time is stemmed around a few factors. It could be a holiday coming up, it could be a wedding, it could be they're just not feeling great in themselves. And quite often, what I'll see happen to the majority of the population is they'll have a yo-yo effect. So they'll have this motivation to start going, they'll start training, but they'll often go to quite extremes straight off the bat. So the example I've got in the first slide here is, come Monday, I'm going to go to the gym every day for 2 hours, eat 1,000 calories a day, and eliminate all carbohydrates from my diet. Now, that's something where folk can take really extreme action because they're motivated. But what we always find, it's a destined to fail approach because it's not realistic and it's not sustainable to your regular lifestyle. Now, what I kind of say to folk, the number one thing we've got to do is create and keep healthy habits. But the first thing I have to do with a client when they sit down is I need to actually understand their lifestyle their social life, their work life, their family life, because every individual's different and everybody's got their own constraints. So what is the truth and the realistically possible is that individually we can all make time if we want to exercise, to train for our own benefit. It's just that we've got to find a system that works, that suits. It's not that you have to do what one of your friends does. Also we had somebody say that they're training for a marathon, which is incredible, and doing their excess training, and that's amazing, but that might not be for everybody. So what I want to look at with creating healthy habits is the first thing that we need to do is normalize exercise as part of a regular routine. Okay, so exercising shouldn't be something that we separate from any other important factor within our actual day-to-day life, right? So it shouldn't be any different from brushing your teeth, going to a work meeting. Exercise doesn't have to be extreme. It's just actually finding a level that you're comfortable doing, something which you also enjoy to a degree. And there's so many different types of exercise, but it's finding something that you are really happy with, that's set in your diary, that you're going to keep as a regular routine. So the first thing I'll say to my clients is about setting your minimum and not your maximum. And that's the words that everyone should live by. So we need to really keep a healthy habit. We have to hit a minimum target that's realistic for the individual. So that is something where on your busiest week that you can maintain. So your minimum might be really, really low, right? So I would say to somebody, I don't want what your optimum is. I don't want to know what's possible when you've got a free week. I want to know on your busiest week, what is it that you can do that you can maintain? And that might be, look, somebody might say to me, look, I'm a most stressed week. I might have 20 minutes 2 times a week. And I'm like, perfect, that's your minimum. Right? I'll have other folk that maybe say I've got 3 hours a week regularly that I can exercise and train. Perfect. That's their minimum. So it has to be different from person to person. The only way you can do that is by looking at your diary, looking at your regular week and seeing what spaces that you've got, maybe dead spaces. And that can quite often be for people earlier in the morning. It can be maybe before you've done the school run, or it can be the other end. It might be on your lunch break, or it might be after work. It's finding out what kind of gaps are there for you. So we're kind of always say to folk is doing something is always better than doing nothing. But we're quite bad as humans is we're not in a routine, and everything can go completely. As Harry was saying before, you'll see the conversation of maybe somebody's been in routine running 3 times a week, then maybe go on holiday, come back from holiday, and then it takes them an age to get going again. What I would actually also counter with that a little bit is that once you've actually established really good routines, they're incredibly hard to lose. So as difficult it is to start, once you've actually got a healthy routine that suits your lifestyle, that will be your minimum. And once you have a minimum, over time, you might be able to build on that fundamentally. But the most important thing is just being active, finding something where you can be active, whether that's through stretching, through doing core work, strength training, cardiovascular, and it could be as simple as going for walks around the block. Just something where you can elevate your heart rate, and you're going to get all those mental benefits, mental health benefits as well. So what we're going to look at, I want to go down to if you can, Harry, take me down to the creating the why. So there's 2 different things that we look at. It's values-based versus goals-based when I sit down with individuals. Now, a lot of times, the way I look at it is the only way that you're going to keep something as a lifetime habit is if you create a value behind why you're doing it. And the value is going to be much different from setting a goal. Now, a goal could be something very simple as I want to lose a stone, or I want to train for a 10K or a marathon, or whatever it is. Now, the problem with goals is that they're very much a pass-fail mentality to it. So if you do complete it, if you do lose that stone, then what's next? Either you take the stone off or you don't. And then quite often what happens with people, if they fail, they'll go back to doing absolutely nothing at all. And that creates a negative loop. And that's how you're going to get that kind of yo-yo effect with your habits. Then equally, if you say, for instance, target to go and do a 10K and you achieve that goal, after you've done the 10K, then it's a case of what's doing next, because equally you can drop off your motivation. Now, I'm not saying that goals are inherently a bad thing to have, but it can't be inherently the basis of why you exercise in general. The way I look at goals is they're great waypoints if I need that extra bit of motivation, but it shouldn't be why you start exercising from your basis. Now, everybody's values are going to be different. That's an individual question that you've got to ask yourself. And quite often for me, it's going to be that I know I exercise, and this is what I'll say to anybody that's trained for a long time. You start training for the physical benefits, but now I pretty much train for the mental health benefits, because I know how much it helps my clarity of thought. I'm an avid overthinker. It certainly brings me back down to a kind of even keel. And I know that I sleep better, I've got better energy, and I'm going to be much more productive, not just in work, but in my daily life. Now, I know how I feel when I don't exercise. So my values are based off, I know I will feel better in myself and I'm going to be more productive, and my self-esteem is going to be much greater. And that's what I apply my values to. Now, it could be that a kind of common value for folk why they start exercising is if maybe they've had chronic pain before. And once they've got rid of that chronic pain, they don't want it to come back. And if they've got a routine that they've got. So what I kind of say to folk is, you've got to create the why behind everything. I'm quite a logical person. I always like to have a reason of why I'm doing something. And I want you to kind of individually say to yourselves, what are the values to why you exercise? Or what are the values to why you want to start exercising? So that's a real important basis to remember. Never start exercising just with a basic goal in mind, because it's what you'll tend to find is it will always become a pass-fail scenario. Now, what I would also say with exercise in general, the hardest thing about it is getting started, and it's looking at what type of exercise. It can be very daunting going to the gym if you're not doing that in the regular. It can feel like a hostile environment that you're going into. There's lots of different ways that you can do that. Now, my other webinars, this is obviously the last one of the series. Next week, next Thursday, I'll be starting the series again. And this is very much looking at all the individual aspects of physical exercise and looking at how to be maintaining, keep healthy habits, but also the different types of exercises that you can do. So when we look at the getting started webinar, which is on next week, we're going to really look at that. So if you've not seen that, that will be a great chance for you to go back and start learning from scratch. So if we want to look down at the great ways to get started slide for me. As I said, first thing I want you to do is just write down your values of why you want to get started and setting your minimum of what it is you can do. If start with your most basic, and that is just maybe going out for walks. Maybe try and understand how many times a week that you're going to do that. I would get to do your own research now, whether it's through family or friends or maybe somebody you know that does exercise regularly. It's good to just ask away. You can obviously ask in the Q&A today on different options of exercises that you could do. A big thing for me is that I'm got to put my training in my diary. That for me really, really helps. And it makes it much more of a non-negotiable when I've got it in my diary. That's me personally, because I kind of live off my diary. So if I know, oh, I've got a spare hour, I've got it in my diary saved, I know that I'm just going to not think about it. I'm just going to go and do it. And I'll instantly, doesn't matter how tired I am or how stressed the day I've had, I will feel better for doing it. Doesn't have to be the best session in the world, but at least I've done it and I know I'm going to get benefits from that. So the big thing I'm going to say to you is keep your eyes peeled, obviously, on the Ellie platform. There's going to be a lot of obviously great material coming up there. Harry's obviously done a lot on the mental health perspective, but it's about trying to bring it all together. But I think obviously if we can do this together in terms of creating an understanding, and I always say if you've got the knowledge behind it, you've got to remove a lot of the fear behind getting started. So I think what we'll do is we'll take this down to our Q&A, and I'll let Jake take over. Thank you.
That's right. All right, cool. So that was such an insightful session, Grant and Harry. And I want to say on behalf of all the participants here today, a thank you for your time and effort in creating the presentation for today. What we'd now like to do is invite you to ask any questions you have for the pair of specialists today. Please feel free to type those questions into the chat box and we'll go through as many as we can one by one. We encourage you to ask anything that's on your mind, whether it's about your mental fitness journey, overcoming any specific challenges, or just optimizing your current routine. Our specialists would love to hear from you. And I want to try my best here, gents, of asking you the questions that we have been asked and trying to break it down so you each have a segment each of the question to answer. So the first question we were asked is, which exercise is suitable for someone who works 8 hours a day sitting and regarding to mental work? So Grant, the question I want to ask from you for that then is what it says, which exercises would be suitable for someone who works 8 hours a day? And before you do answer that, Grant, Harry, for you to start thinking in the background, is there any type of activities or things you could potentially do to help you with the mental aspect when you are at work for 8 hours? So Grant, if you could kick off, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think what I look at, especially if you're sitting at a computer desk for long periods of time, that you're going to create a lot of postural imbalances. Generally because your hips and shoulders are going to be in a state of flexion. So a lot of times that's where we'll get a lot of back pain related or hip pain, shoulder pain, neck pain coming in with sitting at a desk for long periods of time. I would initially always say to folk to start with more down the lines of mobility. So looking at different stretching programs to get you going. Once you get more confident and you're feeling actually your body's relatively mobile, you can build on that with your strength training on top. Also, if you are seated for long periods of time, it's really important to get that heart rate up and getting a minimum level of kind of cardiovascular response. So again, trying to get your walks in regularly. So if you're sitting for 8 hours a day, even on your lunch break, trying to just maybe get 20 minutes out of your chair and just go around the block and just try and get that heart rate elevated, and your body will thank you for it.
Thank you, Grant. And Harry, in regards to that element of the question, for any mental benefits or anything you can do during your working day?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's difficult as jobs when you're stuck at a desk for 8 hours or working for 8 hours. I think it's sometimes, especially in winter, sometimes you don't see much sunlight either. Sat down for long periods, it's hard to, you feel like you haven't moved as much. It can, I think from a mental health perspective, sometimes it can be hard on your focus, concentration as well. So I think from a ergonomic point of view, but also from a mental health point of view, it's great to get up from your desk try and do it every hour. So even if it's just 5 minutes to have a walk around, I think you're getting the benefits of being outside, you're getting the benefits of exercise in small bursts. It just helps in terms of focus as well. So I think if you're helping to maintain your energy levels and focus throughout the day by breaking it up into smaller segments. So we recommend to people if they find they're more fatigued at working non-stop without a break. So I think building it into your breaks is something that's really valuable. And even something small as something I used to do is even just going up and down the stairs if you're in an office, or if you can go outside and go walk around the block, just something little like that. If you're doing that every hour, it helps you keep your body moving. You're not sat sedentary for too long. So I think that's something small you can definitely build in.
Great, thank you, Harry. Another question we've been asked then is, although I exercise almost every day, I tend to gain weight rather than feel like getting fit. So the first part of that, Grant, if you've got any thoughts you'd like to talk about that from the physical activity point of view as to why someone potentially might be gaining weight during exercise. And similar to yourself then, Harry, if there's any mental aspects of that to keep yourself going where you may not be seeing the desired outcome of when you're training, and how to just keep going. So, Grant, if you could start, please.
Yeah, so look, we've also got to look at what we talk about, whether it's weight gain. Is we're just looking at a number on the scales? Are we seeing a difference in the body composition? Weight is just one of many different statistics that we look at, and it's not the best one to look at because fluctuation in weight will happen daily. So you within a week will have about a 2 kilogram switch of your weight. Now, if you're actually physically seeing yourself getting heavier over a prolonged period of time, for me, then I'm going to look at the nutritional side of things. So when you do exercise more, your hunger is going to be greater a lot of times, so you'll want to eat more. There needs to be more of a regulation behind the calorie intake that you have, depending on what your goal is. That's where, like, calorie trackers, your MyFitnessPals or whatever are great to do, and try and get it as accurate as possible. It's not about, again, it's actually not about food elimination. It's just making sure that our portion control is accurate, that it goes hand in hand with our exercise. So we're going to see the physical or visual benefits as well as our physical benefits.
Okay, thank you, Grant. Harry?
Yeah, I can imagine that it can be quite demotivating if you feel like you're putting a lot of work in and you're not seeing the benefits you want to see. So I can imagine sometimes, and especially trying to build a habit, that can really derail that sometimes for a lot of people. So I always think with a lot of this, you have to always remember that even over a week, it is never like a perfect trajectory upwards of improvement. I think with any of these things, there's always going to be ups and downs, peaks and troughs. So I think if you see something changing over a week or two, and it's not the direction you want to see, I think always try and see where you were six months ago or 12 months ago. I always think that's quite useful because you can see the overall progress is really, really valuable. But yeah, like Grant was saying, thinking about what's happening, I think something we talk about in terms of mental health and our own habits is always like reflecting. I think reflection is always a useful tool. Just thinking and sitting down and thinking like, what's happened this week? What have if I've done anything differently, is there anything I can do differently next week? You can start noticing those patterns of like, oh, when I've done this exercise, or if I've been out with my friends, family that weekend, or done a holiday, or I've been eating this or eating that. You can start noticing habits about what might be happening and make those changes yourself. So
I would put on top of that as well, that rather than just relying on scale weight, quite often what we'll do is measurement weight. Measurements. So I'll take measurements around the belly button, around the hip, around the chest and back, because long term they're the ones where we'll see the differential. So if we're seeing weight coming across where all our vital organs are across your belly button, if we're seeing that measurement come down, if we see the measurement in the chest and back increase or around the hips increase, that's not a negative per se, right? That's where actually visually you'll see a differential with it as well. So there is different measurements. I wouldn't just rely on scale weights because it fluctuates incredibly. If you do take your scale weight, you need to do it daily and then create an average. That will give you a much more accurate pattern of where you're going.
Great, thank you both. Next question is a very specific one. Is there a best time to do exercises, for example, the morning compared to the evening? Is there any research on that from both the physical or mental side?
No, your body doesn't know what time of the day it is. I would say from a physical standpoint anyway, the correct time is the time that you can make. And that's the truth, the answer to it. Yes, if we're going to get, we can look at nervous system related to strength training, that there's your nervous system, you're going to be much more awake and alert in the afternoon than you might be first thing in the morning, but generally it's not going to matter. It's going to just come down to when you can actually fit it into your lifestyle.
Thank you, Grant. Harry, anything on the mental side?
I'd agree. It's like what a lot of people tell in the chat about doing things you enjoy, and it's about finding what fits into your routine. I think if you try and fit into fighting against the grain about what's normal for you and what's possible within your work routine, your life, I think it's just going to make it hard for you to actually stick to it properly. I think that doing the exercise is the most important bit, more than anything else. So you've got to find what's good for you and what's enjoyable, what's easiest.
Great, thank you both. So the next question then, I have heard that high intensity workouts increase cortisol, which can also impact on weight. What are some of the best exercises to do if you feel highly stressed? And I think, Grant, this is more of a specific question for yourself, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not personally, I'm not a massive fan of like HIIT training per se. I think for somebody that's already stressed, the whole point of it, why it got popular is because of the time. You need very little time to actually do HIIT training. That's the kind of the positive behind it. The negative is that you actually have to work at a capacity of 90% or above, which is high, especially if you're somebody that's not trained. So you can actually, yes, create a negative response to that. For a real kind of cortisol effect to it, you'd have to be doing it pretty regularly. So I wouldn't say that's something. I would look at something more balanced. You can still do cardiovascular. Your cardio zones are set into 4. 4 being your high intensity, where you're generally be training at above 90% of your heart rate. But Zone 2 and 3 are going to be quite a lot more comfortable zones to training that you can get a lot more benefits from. Equally, remember that resistance training can have as much effect on improving not obviously just your body composition, but the strength of your heart and your vital organs as well.
Great, thank you, Grant. So next question then, and it's two questions specifically more about menopause and the subsequent effects of it. The first one, menopause has caused this individual to have anxiety, which in turn has on occasion prevented them from stepping outside, even for just a short walk, and they find it very difficult to overcome. I guess the question for you, first of all, then, Harry, is there any suggestions then for that anxiety aspect to help this individual get just firstly out the door?
Yeah, that's really tricky, and there's so many kind of cognitive changes that can happen in that time as well that can really lead to challenges outside of the exercise side as well. So I can imagine that's really tricky. Yeah, I think even finding support in social support where possible might be helpful. It's maybe just finding advice from others who maybe had similar experiences might be a useful starting point. I just feel like if you're feeling you're on your own in that situation, it can feel, or feeling like stress that's causing you is you feel like you're on your own in dealing with that. I think finding a community of other people who've had similar experiences, it might encourage you to engage in exercise in a way they have as well, and feel like, it is possible. So finding that sense of, I can do this might be useful. On that note as well, it's something that I believe in the future we've got a program looking at menopause coming up later in the year. So I think watch this space for something that might be more, give you a lot more advice on that as well.
Thank you, Harry. And then Grant, just to follow on question, I guess, then is once this individual does find themselves with the motivation and the support to be able to get themselves out that front door, is there any kind of tips and tricks you then help or suggest for them to help continue on that trend of proceeding to do the physical activity?
I think again it comes down to enjoyment of when you're probably talking a case like that of something that you're comfortable doing. So I think if you can, it's about finding probably more what your niche is, what it is that you feel that you can maintain. And I think all of that will come from Harry was saying as well, having a lot of social support. So what's quite positive with say for instance gyms or small group classes is that you can create a really good community that will really help each other. And I know like my gym for instance is small group classes. Everyone knows everyone's name and everyone's super friendly with each other, and some of the best friendships have come out of that, because a lot of times you'll meet people that are very similar to yourself, and also you'll meet people that maybe are completely opposite, but you can create really good friendships and a support unit.
Right. Thank you, Grant. And ironically, since you have now mentioned the small group training, we did have a question earlier saying they are interested to learn a bit more about small group training. Is there any suggestions that you have to help find one, like what they could potentially search online or anything like that?
Honestly, it just probably from your local region, if wherever you're based, and just Google's your friend there, and just type in small group training with that. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of it. I think it takes a combination of having detailed coaching in a small group environment where you know that you're doing the right things correctly, that you're not going to hurt yourself, and being able to see the progress, and then again just having that great community vibe to it. I think it ticks a lot of boxes. I mean, there's so many different types of small group training. It has got quite popular, which is positive. I would again maybe rely on folk that if you know anyone that does go to small group trainings and ask, but they're all so different because they're all individually run. So it comes down to actual, you'll get some good ones and you get some bad ones. It's just doing your research on that.
Great. Thank you, Grant. So another question that we've had then, is there a type of exercise that is better for our mental health? For example, like gym compared to running? I guess, Harry, you could start yourself then. Is there any psychological benefit differences we could talk about?
That's a good question. Kind of linked in with the question we had before about HIIT as well, and the differences in kind of intensity levels. I think the social aspect definitely helps a lot as well. If you've got something that is linking with kind of something you enjoy, you've got the social aspect. That's something I say in our sessions around self-care. It's all about something that's efficient, I think, is good. So you can tick a few boxes at once is good. So you've got the benefits of exercise, you've got the social support and sense of belonging. I think that, and if you've got a goal as well in mind, so as Grant we talked about earlier, kind of helps build your self-esteem. I don't think it really matters what type of exercise it is, as long as it's something you enjoy is more important because you're going to stick to it more.
I would just say I'd sort of that. I would where I see folk kind of quit the gym quite quickly is if they're doing exercises which creates that fight or flight feeling to it. So anything which is too high intensity to start off is not going to be great for you because you probably feel out of your depth. So maybe just trying to find something which is a little bit more gentler paced to go with, just to initially build up your basic kind of fitness levels. Because I think if you have that nervous feeling going into the gym and you do something really high intensity where everyone's moving fast, that you might just suddenly go, oh, this is not for me. Or equally, if you do something where you're maybe lifting too heavy weights at the start and you hurt yourself, or you've got really bad muscle soreness, these are a lot of factors that can end up just making you not want to go back to the gym. So it's just about starting nice and easy and finding something at a gentler pace, and then you can build on it from there.
Great. Thank you both for some great answers there. Another question is a very specific one as well. Sometimes this individual tends to feel worse after exercising. Is there any physical or mental reason behind why that potentially could be?
Probably need to know more about what they mean by feeling worse. Is it feeling like, is it mental or is it physical feeling worse? Is it something where their self-esteem's not there, or are they actually physically feeling sick? Or I probably need to know a wee bit
We
more.
could answer it from both perspectives then. So Grant, if there was someone that was in a specific situation that felt physically they had an adverse effect.
Physically, I mean, God, there can be so many reasons, right? So it can be nutritionally based, right? If they're not actually having enough food, for instance, they can be hypoglycemic. They can end up, just actually feeling sick or dizzy after exercising if they're not fueled properly. So always making sure that you have like a small snack, a banana, some fruit, half hour before you start exercising, just to give that a little bit extra energy. Obviously, if you're feeling it's like heart palpitations or something like that from a physical standpoint, then maybe make sure you're getting your blood pressure checked up, and make sure you get your heart rate checked. If it's a mental thing, a lot of times for folk it will be self-esteem. That's a big thing I talk about. There's not an individual in the world that doesn't have some form of body dysmorphia. Even the fittest, strongest people in the world will have days where they just don't feel great about themselves, and there's a lot of self-comparison that comes into when it's in the gym setting. A lot of folk get into their head that they're everyone's looking at them, or they're comparing themselves to somebody else, where the actual reality is that everyone's feeling the same. And it's just actually trying to understand that we're all in our own kind of route or path that we're working towards. Some folk are just starting off for the first time. Some people have been training for years. But the most important thing is that we're doing it, and then we're making sure that we've got time to train.
Great, thank you, Grant. Harry, anything to add?
Yeah, I was trying to think of some reasons why, like you were saying, Grant. I think it really depends on the individual and what they're going through in that moment as well. I mean, my initial thought was from like you said, a nutrition point of view, even hydration as well. Like, are they dehydrated post session? Is that impacted them anyway? Because we talk about a lot in terms of self-care and the impact that has on our brain fog and mood and able to think clearly. But yeah, even just if you've set goals, it's very easy to, if you feel like you're not where you should be, you can easily kind of start beating yourself up and thinking you should be doing this. And like Grant said, it could very easy then, if there's people doing it also in groups, that can also sometimes be detrimental. Other people are progressing further than maybe you are. You start looking at yourself. That so the comparison's a thief of joy. And that's correction is quite useful there. I think it'd be useful to hear from that individual kind of what that the circumstances are, because there's so many factors that could come into play.
Okay, thank you both. And if they do comment, I'll make sure to bring it up. Another question then. So how can we try to exercise more when our mental health is feeling low? So if we're talking, there's no base to start with, as it can be difficult to just find motivation. Grant, if you could start with yourself, any suggestions for starting to exercise more when the mental health is just in the low place to begin with?
Yeah, it's hard. Like some days you'll just get days where nothing's happening, right? And you've that's where I kind of say to folk about setting your minimum and not putting the pressure on yourself to do it. We can obviously become, the act of doing is a lot harder than the act of thinking about doing is sometimes we can get ourselves in a bubble of Getting out the couch is hard, and we're all going to have days like that, and that's absolutely fine. And what I can say is, like, if we can set your minimum, if it's just in your diary, this is what I'm doing, and it's at a level that where you feel comfortable with, that's the way to go with it. But yeah, don't beat yourself up if you're having a really, really bad day. So we all have them, and as I said, I'm a fitness professional, and I'll have days where I'm just absolutely like, nope, not today. And and don't beat myself up about it. That's the big thing I say to because it's really easy. I know me mentally. If I was on holiday for 2 weeks, and yeah, I felt rubbish by the time I got back from the holiday because I'd just been so out of my routine. And I spent the weekend beating myself up about it and going, well, this is rubbish. And then have a word with myself, and I go, for goodness sake, get your bum up and get out, and felt immediately better for it.
Yeah, thank you, Harry. Anything to add from yourself then? I'm just starting exercise when the mental health's feeling low to begin with.
Yeah, I think it's one of the main signs we see is that lack of, especially with certain mental health conditions, is that lack of motivation, how it impacts on how you're feeling, your kind of mood and your just energy levels as well. So I think just something we talk about a lot is kind of checking with yourself and thinking about what am I, like as Grant said, not beating yourself up. Sometimes even if you set yourself targets and goals as well, and like what you're going to do each day. It's easy then to start feeling guilty when you haven't done those things, thinking, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. It just kind of becomes that vicious cycle in a way as well, kind of feeling worse. So as Grant said, kind of reminding yourself, it's totally okay to have a bad day. You're all human, you're allowed to have a bad day, and just do what you can do in that day. So kind of checking with yourself and thinking, what's something achievable I can do today? What's something that is possible? So it may not be what you set out or what your plan to do earlier, but thinking, okay, what today can I do? I know I've had those days where I think, oh, I should have gone to the gym, but today I'm just going to do a short walk, and that's going to make me feel better. It's better if I do that than nothing. So it's still just checking in and thinking, okay, what is possible? What can I build in? And that'll give you a little boost as well.
I know something I'll quite often do if I'm having days like that is I'll plan what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the week. Like I'll physically write it down, and I'll just say, right, okay, bit of mindfulness. I've had a rubbish day. A bit of self-reflection, and I'll say to myself, right, what is it I'm going to do on Thursday? What am I going to do on Friday? And just have it maybe written down, and that helps me a lot of times. If for me, I'm always a big one for like journaling and just actually writing it down, so it's there, and I feel I can understand myself a little bit better if I can get it down onto pen and paper.
Great, thank you both. We do have one more question, which is similar to one we were asked earlier. Is walking enough, or should we also run? I'd like to adapt that question in a way, and I would like to adapt it for the next steps. So, Grant, the question would be for you, from a physical health and fitness point of view, at what stage, if you feel ready, should you start taking the next steps to enhance the type of physical activity you're doing, whether it be duration, intensity, etc.? And whilst Grant's having to think about the answer, Harry, from your own point of view, is there any kind of things that you should mentally prepare for when you are wanting to take the next step in your physical activity journey? And Grant, we could go back to you, please, for the first question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's so. I think you'll know yourself when you're at a level that you're ready to get going. To the next stage. I think it's relative as well, like to what it is that you actually want to do. If you're, say, start walking and you just feel your general health's improving, then like the doors are open to where you want to go next, right? Some folk want to actually work on strength training, and that's where they might start going to the gym and looking at getting a gym program from a trainer. Running's not from. I'm not a runner particularly, that's not what I get enjoyment from, but there's folk maybe that have got the aspirations of running. That's where you could look at maybe the Couch to 5Ks, a really good tool to use. That will take you in a nice progressive steps to get you to a position that you'll be able to run 5K. So it really comes down to you. If you're feeling like you're at the level of progression, it's maybe just thinking to yourself, what do you think you'll get enjoyment out of next? And then taking the steps from there.
Thank you, Grant. Harry?
Yeah, so I think to the initial point around is walking enough? I haven't got a table in front of me thinking what's the most best exercise for mental health, but walking definitely has a massive impact. So I think if you're just walking, you still see a lot of benefits. If you're doing those 10,000 steps or whatever you can, I think it has a massive impact neurologically as well. So that's still really good. But I think if you're looking to make that jump, it's similar to what we said before. I think that don't beat yourself up if you attempt something first up and it doesn't go perfectly. You know, it's all part of the progression. And I feel like once you start seeing that ceiling move, you start seeing those little incremental changes. It helps build your motivation as well. You know where you previously were. You know that when those challenges do arise, you know that it's not permanent. It will move as you keep moving with it. So I think that motivation will grow as you kind of keep pushing yourself. But I think just seeing it as small increments and, you know, don't beat yourself up as if you don't meet your goal in the first couple of days. You know, give yourself time and be patient.
Great, thank you both. We have got no further questions, but what I'd like to just do then is share some of the comments that we've had as a result of today's webinar. I'd just like to hear some of your thoughts. So one individual shared that they can be doing well with their habits, but if they have a bad day, tired, and don't get up to the gym or walk, they end up self-destroying and eating loads of chocolates or whatever they can get their hands on. So they just wanted to say this talk will really help. So thank you to both of you. Another one talked about giving yourself a little reward for doing something positive. Harry, any shares on that? Would you agree?
Yeah. I think obviously it's not like detrimental to what you've just done. I think little rewards are good. I think especially if it's something new you've kind of built in. I think, you know, like we said before, I always like to say with people I've coached in the past, you know, you're only human. You know, you're not a robot. You know, some of these things do take time to build in. So when you've started building new habits and positive habits, you know, be kind to yourself and reward yourself when you can, and kind of reflect and think, you know, I did do well here. I think it's really good. And like I said, looking back on previous progress, why it's so good to like kind of reflect and journal how you're doing, because sometimes you can't see it on that day, kind of how you're doing. What you've done today might be slightly worse than it was yesterday in terms of your performance, but it might be 10 times better than it was 2 months ago. So I think the benefit of kind of reflecting on how you are doing and how you know you are progressing well. And it's okay if you have a little off day. Giving yourself that kind of pat on the back when you can. We all pat ourselves on the back as much as we beat ourselves up. I think we're in a better place sometimes. So it's definitely useful.
Yeah. And then the final comment that we had, I'd like to just share for yourself, Grant, as well, that this individual has to go, but they want to thank us for the session, and they always find it useful to have a space to reflect on their well-being. Favorite takeaway from the session was setting your minimum and not your maximum, and the value-based versus goal-based stuff. So on behalf of Grant, I just want to share that he does a fantastic job of those in the previous webinars that we've done, and those future ones will be coming back up again, as Grant alluded to earlier, on the 8th of May, and there'll be another one similar to habits and goal-based stuff coming in June as well. So what I'd like to now do then is thank you all for your thoughtful questions and active participation in the chat. We hope you felt it was an hour of your time well spent. Before we do conclude, can I just ask if you can take some time to fill in the 2-question survey I've just popped into the chat? It'll only take a few moments of your time. For those that missed the physical health webinar, as I alluded to, we will be redoing that one on Thursday, the 8th of May. It's titled Getting Started, so please do keep an eye out for that coming into your inbox when I send out the recording for today's session. However, if you would like to opt out for future correspondence of these webinars, just let us know. We can easily do that as well. So for the final time, Grant, Harry, thank you so much for a very insightful webinar. Thank you again for all those that have joined, and have a lovely rest of the day.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.